how to person with a dementia. We really have to be educated on this. We have passed out handouts. Feel free to take notes. And I believe it's going to be recorded. And Tia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Can everyone online hear me okay as well? Okay, wonderful. So I am Tia Delaney-Steward. I'm a registered nurse, and I am currently the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Alzheimer's Association, the California Southland chapter. So we're an association, we have about 70 plus chapters across the nation. I serve here in California, and we cover 7 counties: LA, San Bernardino, Riverside, Tulare, Kings, Kern, you name it, we cover it. We also have an Orange County chapter, a San Diego, a Santa Barbara, and the Northern California chapter in Baytown, California. I started on this journey many, many years ago, as I was working in community as a home health and hospice nurse. I would go into the home, maybe caring for someone, giving them an IV infusion or teaching them about a medication. And maybe 30% of the time, they have a loved one in their home that showed some cognitive problems, some memory issues. And when I would ask about, does your loved one have Alzheimer's disease or not, their dementia? A lot of times people would just tell me, oh, no, that's just my mom. She's just older and getting senile. Or, oh, my dad, he's 90 and he's confused. That's normal. And it made me realize as a nurse that a lot of people, especially people of color, because I work in the inner city, had no idea what Alzheimer's disease even was. And that bothered me for a few reasons. One, it's because I realized we're doing a really poor job at educating the community about a disease that was plaguing our community. But two, it hurt my heart because I realized that the folks that were dealing with Alzheimer's disease and other dementia were not having a dignified journey because people weren't identifying that they even had an illness, right? And so if you don't, or you're not saying a person has an illness, then you're not treating them as if they had an illness. And so they weren't having a dignified journey. And then for the family and friends as a whole, I knew Alzheimer's disease is a terminal illness. And as you get into that moderate and severe stage, you need caregivers and loved ones. And you need folks to rally around you to care for you. So no one was planning for this. So what was happening is when we got to that moderate and late stage, people are wondering who's going to leave their job to care for mom, who's going to take out a second mortgage on the home to care for grandpa. So there were so many things that were happening simply because we didn't have the level of awareness. And so I began to volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association in our community. And after the murder of George Floyd, the Alzheimer's Association created the roles of diversity, equity, inclusion, while a lot of organizations did. And I took this role. And not really because I needed to take the role of a nurse. I have a master's in nursing, I probably work anywhere. But it was really important to me to, one, be very intentional in our community about spreading this information, awareness, sharing the resources. But then I also wanted to be part of a movement in our community to make sure we had culturally relevant and tailored information for those in the community that were dealing with this disease. So today we're going to talk about understanding Alzheimer's and dementia behaviors. So we won't really dig deep into what Alzheimer's disease is and vascular dementia, but if you have those questions for anyone who's new, we can save them for the end of the presentation. I'm going to share my screen and put on my glasses.
Put your lookers on.
Okay, I try to be 27 until I'm not. All right, does everyone see that screen okay? Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So why do we want to talk about Alzheimer's and dementia-related conversation? Well, we know that a person living with Alzheimer's or another dementia is going to eventually struggle to make sense of the world around them. They may not know what is real, what is safe, or what behaviors are appropriate for a given situation. We know that Alzheimer's disease changes the brain and that may make the person act in new and unusual ways. And these behaviors can be frightening for you as the loved one or the caregiver because they will seem abnormal and different. They can also create feelings of anxiety and frustration. Because the person with dementia may not always be able to articulate what it is they're feeling or even what they need. And so while dementia-related behaviors can be challenging, it's my hope that after today's conversation, you'll feel better, that you can more likely engage and understand that these are things that the person with dementia cannot control. Oh, did that fall? Okay. Unmute that. Hold on, sorry about that. They're actually a form of communication, like an alarm signaling an unmet need. The person living with dementia needs to feel safe. They need to feel comfortable. They need to feel understood. And dementia-related behaviors are often the way that your loved one is trying to express to you their needs. So there's a couple of things we're going to review. As a nurse, I always list the objectives. So these are some of the things we'll be going over today. So the first thing I think that's important is always talking about just what are behaviors, right? Understanding the nuances of human behavior is really crucial, because this is how we navigate social and professional settings. And there are really four types of behaviors that significantly influence our interactions. They're physical, nonverbal, language, and vocal delivery. So physical actions relate to what you do, and that encompasses a broad spectrum of movements and gestures that convey messages without the use of words. And so these are like posture and facial expression and body language. So for example, if a person kind of slouched over, that may indicate disinterest or fatigue. We often say a person with a firm handshake is kind of confident, right? Then there's those nonverbal actions relating to how you do it. And that's something as subtle as eye contact, nodding when someone is talking to you, hand gestures, which I do all the time. And these kind of complement the verbal communication. They go hand in hand. So they can reinforce or contradict our spoken words. So really influencing how that messaging is received. So for example, when you maintain eye contact, it kind of demonstrates attentiveness, right? Sincerity, and when you avoid eye contact, it may make you think, oh, is that person dishonest or uncomfortable? Now, when we think about language, it plays a pivotal role in shaping interactions, as it reflects our cultural norms, our personal beliefs, and our social dynamics. So the choice of words, our tone and style of communication can influence how messages are received and interpreted, right? So effective language use involves clarity, conciseness, and sensitivity to the audience preference and cultural background. And then we have vocal delivery, which is often the most important, because it's how you say something. So that's like your tone, your pitch, your volume, your pace of speech, all of what contribute to the overall message and the impact in the interpretation. So a confident and articulate vocal delivery can captivate listeners and convey authority, whereas like a monotone or real hesitant delivery may undermine your credibility and minimize engagement. So in summary, understanding the values of the four types of behaviors are essential skills for effective communication in interpersonal relationships in both professional and personal settings. And it's extremely important to reflect upon them when engaging with someone who has cognitive impairments related to Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. And so when you look at these pictures, I want you to ask yourself, what are the messages being conveyed? So the first one is the woman smiling. What do you think she's saying, or what message is she giving to you? Anyone? Positivity, encouragement.
Calmness.
Anyone else?
Happy.
They're happy, right? She's happy. Now, what about the man with the chin with his chin in his hand? He's thinking about it, right? What else message could he be conveying to you?
Worried.
He's worried, right?
Confused.
Confused, thoughtful, deep in thought, right? Could be planning something. What about the woman with the phone? She really giving us a message.
Angry. It's angry.
She could be angry,
Yes.
right? She definitely using that vocal delivery. You know that tone is being used, right? She could be, mad, sad, but
She's having a moment.
she's having a moment. Now, what about the older woman with the child? What
Loving.
message love,
Yes.
That's Jeannie and Vivian with their grandchildren.
looking like joy, looking like happiness, right? So all of these pictures conveyed a message to you without one word being said.
Mm.
And so you have the skills and tools to understand someone without being able to communicate with them using words. We just sometimes are so used to using our words that we don't go into those other cues that unfortunately our loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other dementia we're going to begin using.
Very good.
So now, how do behaviors happen, right? So behaviors are the interthoughts between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And that kind of forms the formation of human psychology and greatly influences our experiences and actions. And this is a cyclical relationship that's happening 24/7. So first we have our thoughts, and they serve as the catalyst for emotional responses. How we interpret an event, a situation, and stimuli shapes our thoughts. And these thoughts can differ from positive and empowering to negative and limiting. So I'll give you an example. Perceiving a challenging task as an opportunity for growth can evoke feelings of excitement and motivation, while viewing that same challenge as insurmountable may lead to feelings of anxiety or frustration. So now from that thought comes that feeling, because feelings arise from our thoughts and they drive our behaviors. So our emotions are powerful motivators that guide our actions and decision-making processes. So for instance, don't you act and respond differently when you feel confident and optimistic in comparison to when you feel insecure, unsure, and afraid? And then last, those behaviors result from our feelings, and then they reinforce our initial thoughts, right? So our actions often serve to validate and perpetuate the beliefs and attitudes underlying our emotional experiences. So if we consistently engage in behaviors that align with feelings of confidence and self-assurance, we can reinforce positive thought patterns, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of positivity, growth, and resilience. And the opposite of this can be true as well. So we can see the strong interplay between thoughts, feelings, and then behaviors. So what does the brain have to do with all of this? Well, we know it's the hub and the starting point for the complex processing of thoughts. Now, this ain't a science process, y'all. We're not gonna go through this whole process of how the brain works. But I want you to remember these 7 steps: sensory input, processing, brain processing, integration and interpretation, decision-making, motor output, and execution of behavior. Now, I want to remind you that this 7-step process is happening in lightning speed, over and over and over again with each and every one of our actions and responses, every single time. So I'm going to give you an example. So for example, the first time a toddler or anyone who's never seen a stove before sees a stove, they touch the stove, right? If that stove is hot, they immediately pull back their hand and they may even yell out in pain, right? That was the first time they ever experienced that. Now, the next time they approach the stove, we got sensory input, processing, and brain processing. The memory is stored, and so now they see clues to assess and process if the stove is hot or is it cold, or should they touch it? And that's what we call reasoning. And they're able to recall the consequences of touching it if it's hot. And then based on their reasoning or integration of past experiences and interpretation of the current situation, they can now make the decision to execute a behavior, to touch or not to touch. That's exactly how that works in simple processing. And it's important to understand how that works because if someone has Alzheimer's disease, the brain is not working in that same functional behavior. Now, that was a quick but simple example of the brain's process. And I'm not going to dive any deeper because this is not neurology and I'm not going to be out on college credits. So here's a picture of a healthy brain alongside the brain of someone who has Alzheimer's disease. Now, as you can see, the affected brain is much smaller. And this is because it has been compromised by chronic inflammation related to the toxic proteins called amyloid and tau associated with Alzheimer's disease. So parts of the brain no longer even exist. Parts of the brain is shrinking. So you tell me, how can this compromised brain effectively go through that intricate 7-step process of creating and executing thoughts that we just reviewed? And more importantly, why do you expect it to be able to? So here we have someone with impaired lung, a healthy lung and impaired lung. And when we know somebody has lung disease, we want to give them oxygen, we want them to rest. We're like, don't ask them to do that. They need that oxygen. Here we have someone with congestive heart failure. You see the normal heart, the valves are larger, it's not as swollen, but when they have congestive heart failure, they can't exercise, they can't walk the same, maybe they can't breathe the same. And we go, oh, no, get them a walker, get them a wheelchair. We don't want to overexert them. If someone was walking and they had congestive heart failure, they were walking really slow, we wouldn't get behind them and push and say, you know what, grandma, you need to move a little faster, right? That's not what we do. But here's someone that has a compromised brain. Sorry, y'all. But look at that brain. An impaired brain. It's smaller than the brain on the other side. So how can someone with dementia have a controlled thought, a behavior, or an action? How can that be processed correctly if the portions of the brain that control this process are experiencing brain cell death, atrophy, and shrinkage? So why do we expect people to engage the same? Why do we confront them? Why do we argue with them? And why do we try to reason?
Say it.
So remember that process we looked at earlier?
The seven.
The dementia related from thoughts to feelings to behaviors, they all go right in sync. That doesn't happen when someone has Alzheimer's disease or cognitive impairment. Dementia changes the way the brain processes thoughts. People have difficulty finding the right words, organizing their thoughts, ideas, and words logically, keeping a train of thought, attaching the right emotion to the right behavior, and expressing themselves. And so they may begin to use familiar words repeatedly, because this is the word they know. They may begin describing familiar objects rather than calling them by the name. The thing on the wall that tells time, because they don't know the front clock. Reverting to speaking a native language. If English is someone's second language, they may go back to speaking Spanish or Italian because they no longer remember English. They speak less often because they can't get the word from their mind to their mouth to say it. So they may know what they want to say, but they can't execute that function. And sometimes they stop speaking altogether, especially in the moderate to late stages. And so they're going to rely on gestures as their only form of communication. So I may have said this before, once an adult, twice a child. What does that saying mean to anyone? Anybody want to share what that means? What does that mean to you?
We revert back to our child. Well, I never reverted, because I never got a childhood.
Someone's reverting back to childhood. Anyone else want to share what they think that means, or when they use, who's used this terminology? Okay, and when have you used it, for what reason? What does it mean when you say it?
What does it mean?
When you're saying it?
Oh, well, basically, you are a child getting your diaper changed, being fed, being moved around, and then that same thing happens in the geriatric population.
Got you. Back there?
They're moving back into the same level of dependency as when they were a child. They can't do as much for themselves. And so now they need more help, and slowly they begin to build up that dependency as when they were a child, learning how to do things for themselves. And now they're forgetting how to do things for themselves and going back into the
Kind of reverting. Anyone online, do they have anything? Are we good? I'm gonna ignore all online people and forget.
Please feel free to unmute folks online.
No? Okay. So, yeah, I literally despise this statement. I know we say it. I know why we say it. But using the phrase once an adult, twice a child to describe someone living with Alzheimer's disease can unintentionally strip them of dignity and identity. While memory and function may change, the person remains an adult with a lifetime of experiences, emotions, and purpose. Children don't have lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have previous abilities. They're learning them along their journey. They don't have decades and decades of memories. And they have not yet developed years and years of emotional and spiritual connection. So the phrase once an adult, twice a child is often used with good intention to describe dependency in later life. But when applied to people living with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias, it can actually be harming and demeaning for several reasons. So for one, it kind of infantilizes the person. Comparing adults with dementia to children diminishes their lifetime of experience, their wisdom, and their identity. People living with Alzheimer's disease are still adults. They're still parents, they're still professionals, they're still community members who deserve to be treated as such. And this phrase can unconsciously lead caregivers like you and I, or professionals, to speak in baby talk, make decisions for them rather than with them, or overlook their preferences and autonomy. Another thing, it reinforces stigma and shame. Language shapes perception. The twice a child analogy frames dementia as a regression or failure rather than a medical condition. So it perpetuates that stereotype that those with dementia are less than or no longer themselves. It neglects emotional and spiritual continuity. While memory and cognition may change, the emotional and spiritual essence of the person remains. People with Alzheimer's continue to feel love, joy, frustration, and connection. And it undermines person-centered care, framing them like they can't do things anymore, instead of thinking of let's find a new way to do this or support that person. And it can trigger unconscious bias as caregivers and make us more paternalistic, right? Taking over, making assumptions, withholding information for someone's own good. And such attitudes reduce opportunities for shared decision making and can erode trust and dignity. So I ask you to sometimes describe your loved one living with Alzheimer's disease to say they're an adult experiencing changes in ability and memory. They're a person living with dementia, but they're still whole, still worthy, and still here. They may need support, but need to be treated as less, but do not need to be treated as less than who they currently are.
That's good to you.
That's why I love this woman. So we're gonna have a little bit of audience engagement right now.
Smart.
I'm gonna share this with you. So here's a scenario. Your loved one has a bladder accident. How do you respond? Baxter?
I'll respond because this happens often.
Mhm.
My first thing is I don't try to make her feel bad about it. I'm like, it's okay. I'm like, let's get cleaned up, so I'm very compassionate about the situation because I do understand that she didn't do it on purpose. So, when she's away, I kind of laugh to myself like, okay, here we go. All right. But I'm very fair with her, like, it's okay. I'm like, no, because she does feel embarrassed. I'm like, it's okay. It happens, and then we go get cleaned up.
Okay, there you go. Anyone else wanna share?
Yeah, the same problem.
Mm-hmm,
I came home from a boarding school when I was 18,
mm-hmm.
and my great grandmother was 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I take her for a walk. And in there, and I take her for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, try to put the music over
That
there.
distract them. That's a good thing. Distraction is very, very good. Thank you for sharing that. So I love what you said in the back, because when it happens, sometimes we're busy and we're frustrated and we're moving fast, especially if you are sandwich generation, taking care of children and taking care of an older loved one, taking care of yourself, right? So you come home and maybe it's your spouse or your grandfather. And so we like for us to say adult words. So try not to say, oh my goodness, you wet yourself again. Let us get you over to the potty, or we need to get you a clean diaper into some clean undies, right? Those are not grown up words, right? We just learned that we don't say once an adult, twice a child. They're still an adult, right? And it may sound like you're being nice and comforting, but it really isn't nice and comforting because the person that's living with Alzheimer's disease knows that they're an adult. And so in their mind, they're like, the word diaper is shameful, right? You wet yourself again. You might not mean, you might say, oh, you wet yourself again, but it causes a little bit of shame. So you can try saying something like, well, you know what? Something must have spilled. Let's go get you a change of clothes. You don't have to remind them that they wet themselves. They know, right? Let's go sit on the toilet, not the pot. It's the toilet. They're an adult. Or I need to change the sheets. And that's the period. Not I need to change the sheets because you wet them. Ooh, I just need to change the sheets. That's it, that's all. This is not an easy thing to do. Sharon will know I went on this journey with my husband as his caregiver. He had cancer and he became bedbound. He had his faculties, but sometimes the mobility and the medications caused him to be confused. And in those moments, my job was to preserve his dignity during the last days of his journey. I would never say, you did this or you did that. It was like, this happened, period. So try practicing that. Try minimizing embarrassment. Try minimizing shame. Try not scolding. And guess what? If you're frustrated, if you leave your loved one in the soil bed for 30 minutes, they are going to live. You can go on and do something else. And you'll say, oh, girl, then do it. Nothing is saying you have to address that problem at that moment if they're safe. And I'm a nurse, so I'm telling you. Okay, all right. I don't do it all the time. Back then, get yourself together. Because not only does it cause you the thought of I have to do this, there is a sadness. There is a grief that you are feeling that is attached to you doing this chore for your loved one who once could do it for themselves. And we have to get in tune with our own feelings because they are not going to be able to change their behaviors. Also, if your loved one can still use the toilet but often forget, then you will start to need to reprogram yourself. Start looking for nonverbal cues. Maybe moving around or pacing, or maybe they away from a crowd of people or start making certain noises. Also, think about a toileting schedule. And the toileting schedule doesn't have to be it's 4 hours, you need to go to the bathroom now. You can simply say, you know what, John? We're about to leave, so why don't you go to the restroom before we go? And y'all not even going nowhere. Let me tell you, John go to the restroom, bring him out, y'all eat lunch, go on the break, and then got John in there, but you tell John, and John is stubborn, like I know a lot of folks are. He's gonna be like, I don't need to go. Why am I going right now? We need to go every 4 hours. That's probably not gonna work with a lot of people too. So we have to be a little more creative and less trying to be convincing.
But yeah, I used to do that with Aunt Lorraine, to say, Lorraine, let's go to the bathroom. And Aunt Lorraine would say, I'll follow you. But what I realized years later is Aunt Lorraine didn't know where the bathroom was.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem getting her to go. It's just in her own house that she built up from the ground. She did not know where her bathroom was.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't a problem with her not going to the bathroom. She just didn't know where the bathroom was.
Yes. I was I was a nurse for someone, and they kept saying their loved one would leave the room and urinate in the hallway. And it was making them so angry. And they really thought, they were like, she does this on purpose. She's just frustrated. I said, why would you think your mom would want to do that?
Yeah.
Obviously, when she's leaving the room with good intention and then she gets confused. And so we have to reprogram our minds and ask ourselves, why would our loved one want to do this? Is it really that's what they're doing? Is that art? So here's another little interaction called Don't Confront. Make sure they can see it over there.
Put that in camera.
So the person with dementia says, you say something to them and they say, nobody's want to make decisions for me. You can go now and don't come back. Now, how many people have been dismissed? I can't tell you how many times I've been dismissed. And it's going on now, and I care for my 95-year-old now. Sometimes tell me mine, what I need to mind.
Party animal.
But again, we're not thinking about their words, we're thinking about their feelings. So we want to say, I'm not going anywhere, and you can't remember enough to make your own decision, so I need to do this. But we're addressing the words. We need to address their feelings. So we can say, you know what, I'm sorry, I know this is a tough time. We don't have to talk about this right now. Or, you know what, I know you're feeling a certain way, but we can get through this together and we can talk about this later.
Mhm.
And then redirecting always works. I have tried this many times. 9 times out of 10, redirecting works. But you got to know your person. Mine, Anna, let's talk about anything that happened back in the day. If I bring up something about when she was 20 or 30, baby, we all was running. I know how to distract a conversation. And so distraction works as well.
Mhm.
All right, so now we're going to get into behavioral changes and things that can cause behavioral changes. So there are 4 types of triggers: physical triggers, social triggers, environmental triggers, and personal triggers. And so it's a never ending process of understanding what these triggers are in your loved one and knowing that they can change as your loved one changes. And we're going to talk about some of the triggers. So when we think about physical triggers, that can come from pain, discomfort, or other unmet physical needs. Remember that the person's brain is compromised, and so a person with dementia may be feeling pain, but unable to correctly express the word pain,
Yep.
or even understand how to express their discomfort. Maybe your loved one is hungry, and the only way they can express this is through screaming or crying. So you have to start asking yourself, when was the last time my mom ate? When's the last time my husband went to the restroom? Has my dad gained some weight and his pants are too tight, uncomfortable to wear? Are their feet swollen and their shoes are now too tight? When's the last time they went to the dentist? Have they had any recent falls? Remember, they can't tell you what's wrong, so you have to start developing techniques to understand their cues and their triggers. Social triggers can include being around someone who causes them stress. Maybe the person is speaking too loudly or too busy. So family events like holidays with small children running around that maybe your loved one enjoyed 10, 20 years ago, but now the children are too loud and people are moving too fast. The lights are too bright. The music is too loud. Church activities. People coming down the aisle, sitting close to the pew, we stand and we sit, right? All of these things are movements that were once familiar, but they can be confusing and disturbing to someone with cognitive impairment. Ask yourself, do they even know where they are? Are we bringing them to church for us or for them? Do they recognize the family and the congregation members? And then what can you do to make them more comfortable? And there's an organization out there that actually comes out and helps to make your churches more dementia friendly and your faith-based organizations more dementia friendly.
Yeah.
So we'll share that information. Alter dementia.
Mhm.
And then there's environmental triggers. Those are stressors that occur in their space, like if the room is too cold or too hot, especially with our aging population. They may not be able to express they need a sweater or a coat, and perhaps even lost the ability to identify their need for a sweater or a coat.
Right.
They just know they're uncomfortable. So you can't be saying, Mom, why you didn't tell me you needed a coat? Or why you didn't tell me you were cold? That probably won't be the best form of engagement because now she's only seeing your stern face. Some words are coming out of your mouth that seem aggressive, and she's cold. So that's not gonna work. You're going to have to change how you engage because you asking her that question, she might not even be able to process the simple words of why didn't you tell me you were cold? So when you leave the home, maybe bring a warm sweater, hats, cozy blankets. Keep these things with you. And if you are cold or hot, they are probably more affected than you. Are there any odd smells, strange noises, or sounds that are happening? And then at night, shadows happen due to sundowning. So it's just simply someone becoming more confused at night because of shadows, decreased lighting, or having too much stimulation during the day. And then personal triggers come from inside the person. As we just discussed, thoughts, emotions, and activities directly correlate to our behaviors, right? So maybe your loved one is feeling scared or confused about a change in a daily routine. When we had all those fires out there and all those people were displaced, folks with Alzheimer's disease and cognitive impairment were living in homes they never lived in before, didn't have access to their daily routines. People were more agitated, more aggressive because they were afraid. You were afraid if you didn't have a cognitive impairment. So just think about someone that's living with Alzheimer's disease or dementia. And then how are you talking to them? Are you asking them to do something complex? Like, Dad, go upstairs, get your shoes on, grab a coat, we need to go to the doctor. Because that is just they're looking at you. And you're saying, why is my dad confused? Because you've given them a whole bunch of commands. Or you may say, honey, what do you want for dinner? They no longer answer you. Because they're like, I don't know how to answer that question. So we'll talk a little bit about it later, but it's either or. Do you want chicken or fish?
There you go.
Dad, get your shoes. Simple, straight communication. Complexities of putting things in order are not happening in the brain. Complexity from answering a very complex question is not happening in the brain. And it's hard for us to understand that because our loved one used to be able to do that. But you saw that brain, you saw that heart, you saw those lungs, right? So you got to treat someone with Alzheimer's disease as if they have a brain disease, because they do.
My spiritual dad used to always say, daughter, if you have to err, E-R-R, on the side of compassion.
That's right. That's right. Err on the side of compassion. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you.
Now we're going to get into some ways for you to respond, but here are some ways you may see your loved one begin to respond. Anxiety and agitation, right? They may have a hard time sitting still, being restless, mumbling, repeating themselves over and over again because they're nervous or they're worried or they can't express themselves. Anger and aggression, that's a little higher level than anxiety and agitation. And they may start shouting, name calling, swearing, even though they didn't used to swear before.
Mommy.
Hitting, pushing, biting.
Um,
And this can occur suddenly, right? With no apparent to you reason, because you're thinking about it as angry behavior. But it's really may be happening from a frustrating situation and could be their only form of communication and expression. And our goal, what we have to do is determine what the person is trying to tell us, what is happening to create this situation, so we can attempt to minimize it. Suspicions and delusions are directly correlated to person's confusion and their memory loss. People with dementia can't remember who certain people are, what certain objects are for, or where they place items. So think about it. If you have dementia and you can't locate an item, your reality may be that someone is stealing from you, not that you misplaced it. If you can't remember a face, you might really believe that Aunt Betty came to visit you yesterday, even though it was Aunt Betty's daughter, Cynthia, who just looks like Aunt Betty. And if you can't remember that your wife passed away, you may wonder where she is and engage in actions to find her or prepare for her arrival because you truly believe that she is on her way home to you. And then also remember, a behavior is wandering. 6 out of 10 people living with dementia wander. And that happens in the early stages as well, not just the late stages. So make sure you're putting things in place to keep your loved ones safe. So how can you respond? The first thing is to remember this is about them, it's not about you, and address things as much as you can, being kind, being loving, and being patient. Approaching them calmly and joining in their reality by trying to see the world with their eyes. Who are you to say that there's not a dog in the room if they see a dog? Who are you to say that April didn't come by to visit yesterday if she came by 6 months ago and they say April came by to see them yesterday? Who are you to say that they love enchiladas because now they're saying they don't and never have, when you know enchiladas used to be their favorite food? This is now their reality, not yours. And it's hard and it's challenging. And as much education, as much as I do this, it's still challenging for me. But we have to be in their reality. And as long as they're safe, does it matter if April really came by yesterday?
Right.
Yes, girl. Talk about it. You know? Yeah, you know what? There's a dog, well, let's move you to another room. And then I'm gonna go back and handle whatever they're seeing that's making them afraid. So you don't like enchiladas anymore. Okay, you're gonna have to figure out another meal to make for them, because I'll tell you this, the brain is being compromised. Remember, the brain is responsible for taste, for smell, for your sensory organs. So maybe they did like enchiladas, and the part of the brain that now is accustomed to taste or attributes to taste doesn't work the same.
Mhm.
So they don't like enchiladas anymore because that part of their brain has changed. My grandmother loves to put salt on things. She wants to put soy sauce on everything. And so when she came to live with me and I'm managing her blood pressure and I like to cook, I was a little offended. I said, then I had to remind myself. Possibly some of her sensory organs are now a little depleted, so she can't taste it the same. So I use other things to really season the food. And I did go out and get a low sodium soy sauce, and she knows she can do one batch of that. But it changes. She used to like a certain type of ice cream. Now she only likes vanilla and chocolate. And that's what her taste buds like now. So I can't be like, Nana, you used to love 3 flavors.
Yeah.
I grew up on that. That's not what she likes anymore. It's her reality and not mine. Also addressing their physical needs first. Always think physical needs. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they need to go to the bathroom? Did they get any new medications? Are they wearing new clothes, new shoes, new belt, right? So think about physical needs first. Are they tired? Are you tired? But are they tired? Addressing emotional needs. Thinking about how the situation feels to them, avoid correcting people if what they say is inaccurate. Why are we correcting them? What is our goal? What is the outcome that we're trying to get to? Reinforce that you are there to help and help the person redirect some of their energy if you can. And then reassess and plan for next time. Think about what worked when you joined their reality. Or the last time I took mom to church, I know after 30 minutes, she got restless and anxious. So this time when I go, I know I'm going to plan for a 30-minute church outing. Or I know that when we go out, mom gets cold. So I'm just going to keep a sweater or a jacket in the car, right? I know that my husband midday wants to snack. So in the car, I'm going to have maybe some Cheerios, a half a sandwich. I'm not going to be hungry, but for some reason, all of a sudden, he likes to snack during the day. Adjust your behaviors and engagements as they adjust theirs, because they're not adjusting theirs intentionally. It is happening to them, not by them.
That's the key right there.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Sharon, compassionate communication.
Ooh, Lord have mercy.
When we think about compassion, I always say Webster's dictionary is really just kind of broad. And so there's a deeper definition of compassion, and it says to suffer together. And so researchers who study emotion define compassion as a feeling that arises when you're confronted with another's suffering and you feel motivated to relieve it. And isn't that how we feel about our loved one who's struggling to be understood? It also says in Ephesians 4:32,
Come on,
be
girl.
kind, be compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you.
How we
So this is
talking?
something we should all practice every day,
Mhm.
but especially with someone with dementia. And so that top line, you can't control memory loss, only your reaction to it. Reminders are rarely kind. Don't you remember that I told you? It don't sound good right now when I'm saying it. It really doesn't sound good. Behaviors are impaired by a disease that they can't control, and open-ended questions can sometimes create anxiety. So what do you want to do today?
Please.
That's a huge question, even for most folks, right?
Yeah.
So it's really going to be a huge question for someone with cognitive impairment. And then I advise people to do these 3 in any order. Pause, breathe, and pray. You may do 1, you may need to do 3, you may do them often. But I always say check your own emotions and feelings. Assess your physical needs. Are you well? Are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you afraid? But are you sad? When I was caring for my husband with his cancer and caring for him, I was sad. I didn't want to see these things happening to him. So sometimes my engagement with him was based on my sadness. And so they would ask me for something and I can't say that I'm sad and I don't want to cry. So now I'm holding all of this inside and it's affecting how I engage with him. So be in tune with your emotions. It's okay that you feel this way. And like I said, remove yourself from spaces sometimes. And if you have other support, reach out for that. Remind yourself you don't have to always do this by yourself. And if you feel that you have to do by yourself, you already got the sisters working with you. So you're not. And you can reach out to organizations like the Alzheimer's Association about support groups and other resources that are available in the community. And here's a quick list of don'ts. Don't remind them they forgot. Don't question recent memory, and don't take it personally.
Number three.
Three,
Don't
yeah.
take it
Should be number
personally.
one.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Go by their feelings and not their words. And so I use this acronym. Don't confront, argue, or reason. Don't drive the car.
No.
Okay,
Don't
come on.
drive the car.
Don't drive.
Don't drive. And when you in family, so people don't know, you got a little code, be like, all right, Sharon, you drive the car. Why are you confronting? Why are
Yes.
you arguing? Why are you attempting to reason? What is your expected outcome?
Mm.
Okay? Mom, Bob came by to see me yesterday. Bob didn't come by yesterday, Mom. That was 6 months ago. No, he came by yesterday. I remember. No, he didn't, Mom. But what are you trying to? What is your goal? What is your outcome? You just want to be right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter when Bob came by. He
Yeah.
came by. Right?
Yeah.
I know when Bob will come by. So, right? And always ask yourself, and when you're engaging in conversation and you're going to do it, forgive yourself. But
Yeah.
ask yourself, is the conversation kind? The other day, my grandmother has a habit of she can't use the toaster, right? So I don't have a toaster anymore. So she wanted to toast her bread, and she took the bread and she put it in the microwave. If anybody knows about putting dry bread in the microwave, it's going to catch on fire. This has happened more than one time. So I'm upstairs and I hear something, I smell something burning, and you know, the smell is strong. I'm like, whoa. So I run downstairs, and she knew she had done something wrong because that piece of bread was wrapped up in a napkin.
Yes.
But I knew something. Now, in my panic, I'm coming downstairs, and the first thing I wanted to say was, why did you put that bread in the? But I knew that she did not do it on purpose.
No, she did.
Right?
No, she
So I said,
did.
Nana, did you put some bread in the microwave? And immediately she said, yes, I did.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I didn't mean it, you know, and I didn't mean to burn it. And I said, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just took the bread and I threw it in the trash. And that was it. Man, I had a pine saw, light up. It's about 12 hours to get that smoke out. But my initial reaction would have been like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And I caught
Oh, good,
because she
Tisha.
did not do it on purpose.
No,
She got her some bread, put it in a little toaster oven, toasted up for her, and we was all okay.
Hey, honey, I'm so glad.
See, can I add, there's a article in the LA Times, or the New York Times a few years ago that's called The Silent Rage of Caregivers. And basically, the whole concept of the article is that the grief that's up under caregiving
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes come out as anger, even though this is the way it's exposing itself, but it's not the
Yeah.
actual emotion that's underneath what caregivers are really feeling.
Yes.
So sometimes it's just an expression.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I need to read that because
Yeah,
that
I'll
is so
share it.
true. The grief is thinking. And you can be grieving an aunt, an uncle, a spouse, a grandparent, a parent. There's some grief there.
Yeah.
And you don't realize
Right.
that you're grieving.
You
You
don't.
only think you're grieving once the transition.
That's right.
is made.
Yeah.
You don't
Anticipatory
realize
grief.
Uh-huh.
that you're grieving even without the Alzheimer's
That's
or
right.
dementia, you know, because they're slowly disappearing. So you can kind of understand that. But if they're dealing with some other kind of illness, you may not realize. But that's what we learned. You are
Right.
grieving.
You
You
are
are grieving, because grief is really about loss.
That's right. Right. And you lost the person that you used to know.
Yes,
Sometimes when
absolutely,
you- Yeah.
absolutely. And I just want to share another good scripture. I appreciate Ephesians. Here's one in Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. There it is.
Gracious.
Colossians 4:6, y'all write it down.
Right.
Memorize
I
it.
put it in my presentation.
Because Tia mentioned about how we have to change. And from a biblical perspective, Romans 12 talks about us being transformed by the renewing of our mind. And how we renew our mind is by scripture. We got to delete all this other stuff. Well, I'm just going straight off. No, I'm not.
Right. Exactly.
I can. But I'm going by his grace, Colossians 4:6. Okay. Okay, put that in.
Right.
The title of that article.
Or The Silent Rage of Caregivers. You can, I think it's behind the paywall, so I can send the.
Okay. Definitely gonna look that up.
Yeah, that's gonna be good, honey. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah,
So here are a few do's. You may take a picture of the screen, but there's a few do's, and I do have a handout for you that has some of this information on there. Short answers and directions. I love what Mother Peggy said, get to the point and don't go around the Sally's house.
That's mama.
I know that, okay.
Okay, that's mama.
Use bullet points and don't narrate, and then think about their feelings. So when someone says you stole my purse, they're really saying, I don't know where my purse is.
Mhm.
I'm confused, I'm anxious, I'm agitated because I can't find it. And that my thought processing no longer functions the same. So I can't even put together the steps to begin to look for it.
Yeah.
And here's another scenario. A person living with dementia says, I didn't write this check for $500. Someone at the bank is forging my signature. Now, how many times has someone told you they didn't do something that you know they did? And if you haven't experienced that with your loved one, you're going to experience that. So what are some ways that you can address this? Instead of saying, don't be silly, the bank wouldn't be forging your signature. But what are some other ways you can address that if someone believes something is happening that makes them uncomfortable or makes them afraid? Anyone?
think we spot like, well, we'll check into it, let's get some more information.
Yes.
Right.
Call the bank.
Right.
yeah.
We'll call the bank,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Right, we'll check into it, because now you're going into their reality, right? They're saying someone forced the check, so, all right, yeah, let's look into it. Let's see who's forced these checks, right? We need to know.
Yeah, come on, girl.
Right, you might not call the bank, you
Yeah.
know, you may pick up that phone and say, yes, I'm calling to report that my husband's check, but yes, okay, great. Well, I called them and they're going to look into it. It didn't harm you, it didn't harm them, and this agitation now, we didn't have to argue,
See,
right?
that's what I call getting your Halle Berry on. You gotta get your Academy Award, girl. Oh, yeah.
Now, here's a scenario I'm gonna share with you, and this is something that happens. And so I use this because this is probably one of the most heartbreaking things that happens. Your husband with dementia asks, where is my wife?
Mm.
And you are his wife. Or your mother with dementia asks, where is my son? And you are her son.
Mm.
How do you respond? Anyone? Yes.
I say try a reset method where, oh, okay, I'll go get them for you, and then walk out the room and then come back in a few minutes and see if it works.
Reset, that
Yeah.
sounds good. But how many times when this happens, when the first time it happens, you're gonna say, what do you mean? I'm your wife. What do you mean? I'm your daughter. I'm your granddaughter. It's just your normal response. So don't feel bad if that's your first response, because that's a normal response. Why are you looking for them? Because you are sad that they don't know who you are. It's okay for them to forget how to walk, for them to forget how to brush their hair, but now they've forgotten you. That is heartbreaking and that is difficult. But I want you to remember this. It is not that they have truly forgotten you, is that in that moment, their brain is only able to remember another point in time in their life. So they're not forgetting you, just remembering another moment of their existence, a time where you may not have existed yet, right? But they're also searching for comfort, for safety, and something familiar. So if possible, try reframing your thoughts and think, wow, isn't it wonderful to know that they search for me? Where is my wife? Where is my son? When they're looking for comfort, when they're looking for safety, when they're looking for a familiar space and place. Yes.
So, generally, long-term is more embedded. So sometimes they could be looking for a younger you.
That's right. That's right. Maybe the son, they look like the dad, and they start thinking the son is the
Their
husband.
child
Yes.
or whatever. Right, the day she's married.
So it's really true, and that brings up a topic that is uncomfortable, but behaviors. I've had a colleague who was taking care of her grandfather, and she looks like her grandmother. So as his disease progressed, he began to think she was the younger version of the grandmother, because in his mind, he was younger too. And so some of the words and behaviors he had towards her were so heartbreaking for her. It almost makes me cry thinking about the conversations that we had. And it took a lot for her to reframe her mindset.
Mhm.
And many times it was very challenging for her to even care for her grandpa, because he often would think that she was the younger version of his wife.
Wow. Mhm. Mm.
So do elevate your level of generosity. Practice 100% forgiveness. Yes, that's a 100%, not 97.
Got
So blame, practice saying, I'm sorry, you're
Yes.
right, my apologies. I didn't mean to upset you, even if you're not the one upsetting them.
Mhm.
Reassure them that they're safe, that they're doing a great job, that they're not alone.
Mhm.
Redirect them, conversations to new topics, new activities, and join their reality. And try to move to positive topics. If you know what they are, move to those topics. You know what your loved ones, your that are dealing with cognitive impairment like to talk about.
Mhm.
And share that with others if you have hired caregivers. You know, when dad starts doing this, girls start talking about the Dodgers. And he's gonna change his mind and bite on up, you know, and my Nana start talking about her tummy hurts. We start talking about something else. And then she, you know, went on into the room, she got her tummy hurt, you know. So different things you could talk about or distract them, but you know how to redirect your loved one. And then that might not work anymore. So if they find some new ways of redirecting. Once someone is in the severe stages of this disease, this isn't gonna matter. They're just going to need your love, to be
Yes.
comfortable, your affection. So as long as you can engage, do engage, because I can guarantee you, you're gonna miss those moments of engaging. And so just practicing what we learned. Does anyone have any examples that they want to share? Or any tips that they have about a behavior or a way that they've engaged with a loved one? And if not, it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, when we were taking care of our darling mother, we would always kiss her goodnight. We would say, Mom, we love you. No, you don't, you're lying. And we, okay, we just say, okay, Mom.
There you go.
Okay, okay.
Okay, because you know you're not lying. You know you're gonna think that, right? Anyone else?
I have an uncle with short-term memory issues. He has superb long-term memory issues.
Okay.
I mean, long-term memory,
Mhm.
but his short-term, and so one of his issues is initiation. So we have to go by there at least twice a week and say, hey, uncle, it's time for you to take a bath. Oh, I'll take it tonight, later tonight, which we know he's not gonna do.
Mhm.
So we'll say, okay, we'll give it about 30, 45 minutes later. Come on, uncle, we're getting ready to turn your water on so you can take your shower. Oh, okay.
It's like different, just waited, right? Sometimes that pause is necessary, because now part of them is like, if your loved one was a little difficult and stubborn, didn't like being told what to do, let me tell you, that part of the brain still works. Right? So that part where you're trying to tell them what to do, I mean, and it's really challenging, let me tell you. Probably the most challenging is when it's a spouse. Because the dynamic of that relationship, right? So for me and my grandma, I mean, I feel like normally I'm gonna take care of my grandma, right? And then I'm her favorite. That's nice to me anyway. I hope that my family is on here today. But when it's your spouse, it's a different type of relationship. And then having to scold them or tell them to do something a certain way, it's not a normal behavior, right? Trying to tell you when to bathe or tell you to get dressed or clean you up after you've had an accident, right? Or what we call reprimanding someone for some bad behavior that they did. That's not our norm. So that can be very challenging. And so the relationship dynamics really matter as well. Anyone else want to share something? Yeah.
So my loved one, one day was sitting at the table and says, oh, isn't it time for us to get ready to go to take me home? And I paused and I was like, oh, mind you, we're at her home. And I said, okay, let me put my shoes on and then we'll go to the pharmacy and I'll take you home. So I went, put my shoes on and we went to the pharmacy and came right back to where we had left and she was fine.
And there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was their reality that they weren't at home, right? So, and then if someone is maybe missing a loved one, right? They want to call someone that has passed away. It doesn't do us any good to remind them that they passed away, because they're gonna relive that grief over and over again. So maybe it's like, we'll just bring out a picture of them, right? Oh, I can tell you're really thinking about John. Look at a picture of John, you know, and I'll call him and see if John can come over tomorrow. If your loved one is in a space of not remembering that someone has passed away, you telling them that they may come over tomorrow you're not gonna remember
No.
that. Because that is a short-term memory. With Alzheimer's disease, the short-term memory usually is the one that leaves us first, right? That part of the brain hippocampus. So it's okay to say something like that. I know people say, well, I don't wanna lie, but I wanna keep my mom focused. In reality, this is their new reality.
Yes.
It may not be yours, but it is their new reality. So we have to keep reminding ourselves of that. And I'm gonna say it again, I've said it many times, it is challenging. This is not a
Yes.
perfect process. Okay?
Tia, I want to say something, a couple things. I remember, and I think about this now, and I did keep a journal, and I'm glad I did with going through this thing with mom, because some of it is now really funny. But I remember when our pastor came to see mom, the first thing she said, Pastor, I want you to know I've been cussing. And so Pastor, and Pastor Herb, bless his sweetheart, I hope you're on in Africa, honey. He said, well, mother, God understands. When our brains don't really work, but he was so kind to mom, he didn't tell her you need to confess your sin and repent, all that, he just said, well, God understands, but immediately she said, I just want you to know, Pastor, I've been cussing. And she had to do, mom was trying to, Lord, I know I love mother. Mom was dropping the F-bombs, baby.
She was frustrated, she's putting a new way of communicating.
Yeah, but that's all right, I don't care, I love mom.
When they have a lucid moment,
Yes.
that's all it is. It's a
Yes.
lucid moment.
Yeah.
Don't take it and run.
Right.
And think everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Because it's not. Bobby was in this world. One Vivian's son showed up 2 or 3 hours. They had
Yes.
a normal, intelligent conversation. He left, mommy went back into that work.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's a lucid moment. Don't
That's
take
it.
it and run with it.
Yeah.
And think they can go back and do what they want to do. And everything that we're saying, we always say is easier said than done.
Oh,
Yeah.
for
You
real,
know.
yes.
And thank for that, because people that aren't around them for a long time. Fine to me, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like the one that doesn't make sense.
Yes.
When they don't see that.
When they don't see it.
Yeah, they lose it right then, they don't see that other part.
They try to make you as the caregiver, when you're saying your loved one is feeling, you're like, well, I just saw it.
Yes.
Because that happens in families, and then I say, well, how often do you see him?
Yeah.
You see him once every 6 months, or when they call your loved one and you say, so-and-so's gonna call you, and so they get on that phone and they lucid, they wonderful for 5 minutes.
That's all, yeah.
And then after they got on the phone, and I would tell people sometimes, when you call Nana, she knows you're calling, or she called you. So those are good, that's gonna be a good conversation, because she initiated, she do it right away. Come hang around for a while. It's subtle things. It's very subtle things. And so people who aren't around caring for your loved one a lot, they will come with those assumptions. But I say to you, if your loved one is having these moments, on the process of keeping them safe.
Right.
Don't wait till long term saying, well, we don't see it all the time.
Yeah.
So you're right, I should still let her drive. I should still let her live alone. I should still let him cook. Don't you do that?
Yeah.
Because then when that issue happens, and I use my grandmother. My grandmother got her keys. And she drove her car. And she crashed her car. Lost. And she hurt herself and someone else.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Because people thought she had moments of okayness,
Mhm.
but her not moments of okayness.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have to remind ourselves, I've been around this person the most, I know. Trust your gut.
Yeah.
That's what naysayers say that they may until we're coming around.
Yes, yes.
But I love that you brought us that point. Anyone any questions in the chat before we close?
I'm Stephanie Clay. How are you? Thank you for coming to our meeting and talking to us about how to talk to someone with Alzheimer's. My husband's in a care home and he's been there since June. When we go visit him, me and my daughter, mainly me and my daughter, he wants to know when he can come home. And I
Yeah.
don't, my daughter kind of sugarcoats a little bit, said, you know, your life has changed and this or that. I don't know really what to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know your daughter means well, telling him his life has changed, but every time you go visit him, he's gonna ask you that, so he doesn't remember that his life has changed. Is there
Right.
anything that when you guys go there, are there any activities that are happening at the time?
Yes, they have physical therapy twice a week. They have some of the caregiver, the people there in the home. He's in a home, and it's four ladies, and he's the only guy, and he has his own room on
Okay,
TV and everything. And they play. He
okay.
doesn't engage too long, and I told him, you know, they know that. You know, his friends
Mhm.
come by and probably play checkers or cards or whatever, and it's just not too long. And
Okay.
but they're not, the other people aren't that mobile. And one
Okay.
lady reads her Bible a lot. One lady they have to, you know, I've been over there a lot to see how it works, going at the
Yeah.
dynamics of the running of the home. And so I'm a little shy about going and staying too long. And
Mhm.
and it's not that far from my house, and I can go a lot, but I can't go every day.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think about it all the time. What am I gonna say? What can I
yeah,
say?
yeah. Well, I think part of that, and that's why I'm glad that you explained that. A big part of that is how you're feeling about him being there and you leaving there. So a lot of it is more you than it is him. And that makes sense because you have taken your husband to a new space and you feel
Yes.
like I'm leaving him, I'm abandoning him. So I think you first have to figure out a way how to tell yourself that it's okay, that
Mm-hmm.
you have put your husband in a space where he is safe. And safety is the most important thing. So I think if you can reframe how you feel about your husband being there, you're never going to feel like it's perfect. You're never
Mm-hmm.
probably going to get rid of all those feelings, but remind yourself why you put your husband into this space. And then when you go, try to go and have an activity in mind. If there's
Yes.
television show he likes, a game he likes to play, a book, music, walking, go for an activity. And then when the activity is over, be like, honey, I'll be back to see you again. I'll be back.
Okay.
That's really how to address it. When am I
All right.
coming? When am I coming home, honey? I'll be back tomorrow. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to say you're not coming home. You don't
Okay.
have to say that. But I think what part of it is how you're feeling about him being there. And when you're there, how you're feeling about leaving him there. And it's okay, because you're a
Okay.
human being and we have emotions and feelings. And I would probably feel the same way if it was my husband.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Very should lie and say you're coming home next month.
I wouldn't even say you're coming home next month because they don't know what's going on.
No, I know. They
No,
don't
I just be like, I'll be back tomorrow, you know, or I'll be back to.
I'll be back. That's it. Less is best.
Less
That's
is
another
best.
Peggy
That's a
Valentine.
lovely one for Peggy.
Less
Less-
is-
And
less
Yes,
is
it's
and
best.
eventually they will get accurate because April
They
Rain,
will get acclimated.
like it was in a facility, and you know what? We need to change these drapes because I haven't changed them in a long time. I said, you know what, April Rain, you're absolutely right. We do need to change the drape. You know, she was gonna redecorate them.
Oh,
You know, she never knew where she was, but you know, those drapes have been up there a long time and I need to change them.
Yep, yeah, so you can do that as well. They're eventually, again, we feel such guilt, but if they're in the space that's safest for them, please keep them in the space that's safest for them. Do not remove them from a space, safe place because we feel guilt,
And
right?
it's good for your health. Sometimes you
Yes.
have to, you know, you have to, for their health, for their safety, for your health and for their safety.
Exactly.
You have to place it.
Exactly.
I wanna go with someone else.
Back there.
Barbara online.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Barbara
Barbara, you
Willis.
wanna share?
Oh, I see.
Hi.
Hey, Barbara.
Hey, Tia, thanks for being there. Beautiful seeing you. You know, I came up with this idea. My mother was in a home just like my sister just described, a home with other women, and it was run by two sisters. And what I would do would be go at 11 because she had lunch at 12:30. And so she'd say, oh, you have to leave? I said, no, you're leaving me to go to lunch. So I'll be back at 4. Or I'd go from 4 to 5:30, 6 o'clock when they were taking her to get ready for bed. Oh, you have to leave now? No, you're going to leave. I would say, you're leaving to get ready for bed. So I'll see you in the morning. So that was the way that I could still honor her and let her know, and also salve my own heart of not feeling like I was abandoning her. And of course, I'd walk away from the window. This was during COVID, so I would go visit her at her window. And I'd cry all the way to the car. But for to give them the dignity of having a choice or something on their calendar.
That's right. I love that, Barbara. And that's why these types of groups are so important. Because that's how we learn, sharing tips, resources, best practices. What did you do? How did you do it? This is the best way, real life engagement and sharing those things. Thank you so much for that, Barbara.
Yeah, and even have lunch with him, going to have lunch with your husband. And then when you finish eating, it's like, okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow or whatever. I know you don't go every day, but there gives us as a conclusion, because after lunch, they probably lay down or they go, to have some toilet issues. And so you then are giving them the dignity of having a schedule where you just need to, you're stepping aside, but instead of abandoning.
Yes, and that's a really good one. I know my mother-in-law did that with her husband as well. They would go for lunch, and so it's a really set activity, and then usually after lunch, there were other things that were happening. So he was in a home for Alzheimer's disease, and they would go for lunch, and it kind of really is a set time, and everybody's happy at lunch. Everybody's happy when they're eating, so it was a good time. Did you have a question back there?
No, I just had a comment. I just like to piggyback on what you said regarding groups that are important like this. I mean, this is what I do in terms of working with community, and still they get triggered. You know, for instance, I'm part of a team that supports one of our beloved friends in the community, and we're all helping the family to caregive. And I got into my feelings. She was mad at me because we had to help take her car. And I was the one that picked it up and got the keys, so she got so pissed off at me, and I was in my feelings. I mean, I cried, I was just like, stupid mad at me, upset. So no matter what, I know this, theoretically, and coming to the support groups, this helped to say, okay, we'll stop.
You did the right thing.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm just gonna back off for a minute. I'm not dealing with, so I had to come out of that, and so it's just a reminder, being in these groups and getting support, so.
Thank
Yes,
you for
very
that.
helpful.
That's true. We cry together. That's right.
Okay, we have another question online, Imelda.
Yes, well, I just have a comment. I just really want to say that I so appreciate the presentation, and I feel better that you validated some of the things that I've been struggling with, because I have to lie about telephone calls and the DMV, and I have to repeatedly try to get away from the conversation. Who says I have dementia? So, but my husband is still very kind and really trusts me. And so I just really don't have a problem when I go like, oh, darn, and I said, I shouldn't have reacted that way. Here's the truth, and so I want to just be able to forgive myself and still work with him, because I'm learning more about how it's human to feel human and still be a caring partner. So I really appreciate the presentation today.
Thank you for that. And thank you for being so honest. I think I learned so much from a woman who shared one day her husband had Lewy body dementia. So he was only in his 50s, I want to say. And he began to deteriorate. And she did she has a movie, a documentary. And I remember she came on the screen and she was saying, I'm mad at him. He made me angry today. Right? I don't feel like talking to him right now. And I was like, that is such a real emotion, but we don't talk about some of those things. Like we get frustrated, we get angry, and it's okay. Those are normal feelings. So thank you, mother. I mean, we're human beings, So you forgive yourself, and then you move on into the next thing. Because again, when it's your spouse, y'all think just because someone has cognitive impairment, we not arguing. I could tell my husband, now I'm in charge of your IV. You have to laugh, you're like, oh yeah. Don't get too sassy now. But thanks, you guys.
I had this conversation with Dr. Carroll because I was trying to get some understanding, and he confirmed what you have said. He said the spouses are the most difficult ones to crack that nut, because you think about it, they have maybe been married 30, 40, 50 years to this guy that's on his A game all the time. And then now this. So it's very challenging, very challenging. And you have to see them differently. So, and I remember, because I get calls all the time, Jeannie and I, all the time. So one of our caregivers, she called. I've been telling him we need to go get his hair cut, and we want to go here and there. I said, you're talking too much. I said, shut it down. And so then later she texted me, Sharon, he went to sleep. And guess what? She said, we got his hair cut. We went to the park and everything. I said, it's too much because part of it is a signaling issue in the brain. And we've got to get to understanding, y'all. This is a brain disease.
That's right.
Okay, it's a brain disease. And so you got to look at it, if you can, from that perspective. This brain is not functioning.
That's right.
And but then when she texted me back, said they got all those things done, I said, but I told, then she wanted to take him to see Frankie Mays and Beverly.
I know.
It's too much.
You missed a lot of things too.
Yeah.
You wanna have some level.
I said, that's
of
gonna
normalcy.
be too much people, too much, you know, but anyway. bless her heart.
You missed some of those
Yeah, you
things that
do.
you trying to readjust with that normal relationship looks like again. Yes.
I've got a question related to that. So I have a friend whose grandma is definitely experiencing mild cognitive impairment, very possibly has Alzheimer's or dementia. The family's a little bit in denial. So there isn't a formal diagnosis and there's some resistance to that. And so they're balancing, I think they get what to do in the moment when she can be a little confused and they're learning how to redirect or not confront. But there's still this, like, for her dignity, they want to still do the things that she loved doing. She loved traveling and she's physically able, and so they want to travel with her. And what is the, right thing to do? And, is a diagnosis going to help them maybe realize that?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The first thing I always say is for them to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And the reason why is, like I tell folks, dementia is just a big umbrella term. But frontal temporal dementia processes differently than Alzheimer's disease, different than Lewy body. Or they could have something as simple as a brain bleed or some kind of swelling on the brain that maybe can be reversible. So it's
Medication.
really important. Medication toxicity, right? So there's all types of reasons that a person's in a demented stage. We need to find out the why. So I think the first thing is getting them assessed, right? Just a mini cog is not enough. They need to get blood work, other diagnostic testing done, some scans, so they can get an accurate diagnosis, right? Because breast cancer and prostate cancer are two different types of treatment, but they're both cancer, right? So we really have to encourage our folks that memory impairment is not normal part of aging. Confusion is not normal part of aging. Something is happening with that person. We need to go see what it is. Now, when you get a diagnosis, you can start that care plan. You can chart that new pathway. And you'll know what type of safety measures, a person has frontal temporal dementia, they don't have the same filter and behavior. They have a great memory, but those filters and behaviors change first. So you're gonna think about safety a lot more with the FTD patient than with Alzheimer's disease when it's those early memories. So it helps you engage in their safety appropriately well. So thank you for that question.
I would say,
So,
just so quick about them traveling or taking them on adventures or whatever. Like I said, you have to be very observant as to their behavior.
Yes.
Are they getting lost? Are they forgetting to eat, how to use utensils, going to the restroom and things like that? So maybe a weekend excursion or overnight trip somewhere to kind of be observant as to their behavior outside of the home to see what they can or cannot handle. And that way, okay, maybe we can take a weekend trip. So maybe like a week-long trip somewhere, like 400 or 500 miles away, that might not be great. Maybe we can go somewhere like 20, 30 miles, go out by the beach, somewhere close, something like that. But be observant to see what they can and cannot do. Because you don't want to leave them alone, like, oh, you're sitting here, I'm gonna go to the restroom, then, okay, then come 25 minutes, where are they? You gotta be observant of that type of behavior. If they get lost, you don't know where they are, they don't know where they are, some people forget how to use the phone.
Yeah,
So just be very, very aware.
very
Love
good,
that.
very good. That's my sister Vivian.
I
don't talk about
Well, on the screen, we have a lot of resources that we have available at the Alzheimer's Association, and we have some handouts as well. But the 24-hour helpline is, you can call there again, 24/7. You call at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, my mom is agitated and I need some support. Or you can call and ask for some questions to ask the doctor. We have a community resource finder looking for a daycare program or residential care facility, or how to get an advance directive. Those questions you can call and ask. Resources that you need. Also access to support groups and other resources that are available in our community. I also like to share, oh, sorry, I went back to this one. These are local resources, and I think these are really important. These are things that are actually accessible here in our community. And so I know sometimes people are like, I need something tangible today. And so UNC Family Caregiver Support Center is wonderful. They have all types of resources for families. ACTS, of course, we're all here at ACTS, so I'll talk about that one today. Vet Vetted, free legal resources, so getting the advanced directive, planning a will and trust, those types of things. The guide program is a new, anybody heard of the guide program? You have great.
Yeah.
So the guide program started a year ago, and it's a program that stands for Guiding and Improved Dementia Experience. And it started a year ago with Medicare as a pilot project from July 2023 to July 2024 to July 2025. Now it's a full-blown program from July 2025 for 3 years. And what it is if your loved one has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, they need an actual diagnosis. You can call, one of the places is UCLA, and they have a plethora of resources designed for you. So someone can even come out to your home and make sure it's safe. Someone can go over medications with you, a social worker talking about other resources that are available for you. But what I love about it as well is they offer respite care. So you'll be eligible for respite care that's not IHSS or something like that. So maybe you need to go to a wedding, or maybe you just need some time away, or maybe you have to go into the hospital. But they have some respite care available annually as well. When I tell people about these types of programs, it's national. We don't have any resources for a guide in our immediate inner city. So it's already a letter that we've written to our supervisor, or to some city council persons, because we need to change that. But what happens is these programs exist and we don't know about them and we don't use them. And then 3 years from now, oh, they didn't want it. They didn't want to use it. Or by the time we learn about it, it's all filled up. We can't use it. So I really encourage people to share about the guide program. You can call that number and get some help. Go ahead.
I'll let you finish.
Oh, okay. And then we have Brother to Brother, which is a male support group. And a lot of times men don't have spaces for them. And we know a lot of men, we talk, we share, we go girls trip brunch. But a lot of times men don't have support groups. So this is a great virtual support group for men. And as a hospice nurse, a home health nurse, I would sometimes go into a home and there'd be a 30-year-old man taking care of his mother, changing her, turning her, or his grandmother. But he's not sharing that with the guys when they're watching football. They're not talking about it. When I'm in there, he's talking to me about it. You know, am I doing this right? What is the best way to protect her privacy and make her feel comfortable? And what is that effect on him? So this brother to brother group, I think is so important. So you can call and they can let you know when they have dates and times, and it's national. So it's available for anyone and everyone. You wanted to share something?
Yes, I just want to share, most people that have come before have heard the spiel. I'm a consultant as a licensed American family therapist with an organization called APICA. And it's again, one of these programs that was brought into the community for the community. And we're on the second phase and needing to actually provide the services. They need to provide support to caregivers.
Okay.
I teach a yoga class at Inglewood Senior Center in person. I have a Zoom yoga class for the caregivers.
Okay.
And also we have programs for anyone that lives alone with dementia that can get 1 day center at the facility. It's a day center in West LA. So we'd love to have that added.
Yeah, we will add that.
There are materials that are here.
Okay.
But if anybody's interested in the services, they're no fee. We have a couple of people that do receive the services and have gotten the benefit that come through acts.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Because I love community events, because I know people love, things that are available nationally, but sometimes you just need that stuff that's right there.
Yeah.
I know I did, like what's happening right now in community. And so I will leave you with this. If you are frustrated, remember so are they. If you are afraid, remember so are they. If you are tired, remember so are they. If you are overwhelmed, remember so are they. If you are sad, so are they. Because you are losing your loved one, but please remember they are losing themselves.
That's
So
powerful.
I thank you guys so much for having me out. So much for having me out here today.
Thank you so much, Tia.
Thank you, Tia.
Okay, we have one final question in the
Okay.
chat that we did not get to.
Okay.
So Eric asked, what suggestions do you have for someone that is further along in this disease to where they have no desire to eat as much?
Yeah, that is a tough, my answer, you might not like it because that's a tough one. So as we talk about how the brain is shrinking and the brain cells are dying, we have to remind ourselves that the brain is responsible for everything, including hunger and thirst. So the part of the brain that normally tells us we're hungry begins to not work. And so the person truly, genuinely does not remember that they need to eat. Now, we know we need to have sustenance in order to survive. And so a couple of things, if you haven't had the conversation with your doctor, I would have the conversation with your physician to see if there are other things that you can use. Maybe there's protein shakes or nutrient-rich drinks that you can give to your loved ones. Believe me, if they just want ice cream, things that are rich in calories, that's okay if they're in that later stage of the disease. They don't need to eat a 3-course meal. They don't need to have veggies and a meat and a protein and a fiber. But maybe it's just things that they enjoy eating. The other thing is, and this is hard to talk about, don't force them to. Because also what's going to happen with Alzheimer's disease in the later stages, they're going to forget how to swallow. The brain is responsible for that regulation, and so they can aspirate. Food can get caught in their throat and you think they swallowed it and they don't. They can get an infection, they get caught in their lungs. And so what happens sometimes is people actually die from aspiration pneumonia because we're trying to feed them and force them to drink water when they're not swallowing and they're not processing it. So first follow up with your doctor, see if there's other alternatives. Think about some favorite food that your loved one may have and don't force that beautiful meal anymore. And then 4, just remember that this is part of the process. As sad as it may be, it's part of the process. And I always tell people when they start thinking about feeding tubes and other measures to keep their loved ones with them, to ask yourself why. Why you want them to have a feeding tube, why you want them to have a certain type of way to be able to sustain them being here. Ask yourself if you're doing it for them or if you're doing it for you. That's a personal question. I'm not here to answer it for you, but just remember to ask yourself that question. We want them to be safe. We want them to have dignity. We want them not to be in pain. And we want this transition to be as pleasant for them as possible. Yes, in the back.
I think another thing, you can try to give them small snacks. Like I know with mine, I always feel like, well, you got a snack with me, please. And so I'll take like a small snack, when she's not eating and, encourage her, let's have a snack together, like make it inclusive so that, they're like, okay, well, we'll have something small. So more snacking and little small items.
And then,
That is fine. Yeah, if you don't have to worry about a full meal, a little snack is okay.
yeah, then, just, soft food, applesauce, things like that, that so they can easily swallow. And don't try to give them a great big spoonful at one time, maybe even take a baby spoon and feed them from the baby spoon, if you have to feed them.
Yeah.
So that's easy to swallow.
And be real cognizant or aware of the things that you need to chew.
Yeah.
And even like a grape or a piece of a hot dog, those small round things can get lodged in their throat if they're not chewing. So be very aware of the things that you're now processing to feed them. And a lot of people, when you try to grind their food up, they do not like the way it tastes. You're like, oh, put it in the blender,
Yeah.
and then you're really not gonna eat it. So try to find, like you said, some things that are soft already. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much, Tia.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.